Some non-zombie related junk.
Okay. This is an interactive piece.
I stole your spot, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Do you have the camera back?
You don't have to respond now if you don't want to. I'm just going to pose something, and then I will ask a response whenever you want.
Blow me.
No, thank you.
Maybe later.
Basically, this is a poem of sorts, but it's mostly questions. I'm going to ask you a whole shitload of questions, and I'm going to expect some kind of answer. You can do it now. I would expect a few at least now. You can write
question.
Is it like a heckling thing where you ask a question and we yell an answer?
This doesn't have to be a quiz. This is just whatever you think.
Can we just spout off whenever we want to?
It puts the lotion on its skin.
There is a book right here. This is my writing book. What's going to happen is whenever I'm done with this, it's not done. This is still a work in progress. I will take whoever's responses are what and add it to this. I will, of course, attribute every part that belongs to every person. Anyone that knows me knows I'm all about artistic integrity. Hence the name He-Man Productions, so I don't forget people. Part of the reason. Shut up, Aaron.
Shut up, whoever you
I
are.
saw that look. I knew what it meant. So I can steal his ideas and still not feel guilty. So, here we go. This is Plato's paradox. What if Plato was right, and there are eternal truths? Ethereal knowledge that exists independent of humans, just waiting for us to grasp. What if all knowledge was not the product of human ingenuity, but just our ability to latch onto these truths? We can reach and hold them, but never with our hands. Feel them, but never touch them. What if he was right, but off by a few millennia? Maybe it was a prophetic vision, just waiting for technology to catch up. Some access code or binary formula that taps us into ultimate knowledge. What if you could instantly know anything you wished, and substitute lifetimes of training for a momentary flash? Bach and Bruce Lee, Socrates and Einstein, Lenin and Nietzsche, all of their skill, yours with ease. What if you knew everything? Nothing would be out of your reach. Would you become a god among men, or covertly use your power to reign? Would you be a benevolent benefactor and teach instead? Would you share your knowledge? Would you share your power? Or would it drive you insane, madness that only a genius could know? With no questions left to answer, would why I exist haunt your existence? Would life lose its flavor? Would you spend your life bored, obsessed with trying to locate something you don't know, only to realize it's all been done? Would your heart be left twisted and wrung dry? As your mind grew, would you scar yourself or stand in the freezing rain just to remember what it was like to feel? Would you allow knowledge to make you cold and bitter? Would you allow it to make you a monster, an immoral beast who did only because he couldn't be stopped? If absolute knowledge corrupts, would you lose your humanity at the very moment you understood what it meant to be human? What if you could know anything you ever wanted? What's stopping you?
I got something to say. First of all, you totally fucked with me because I thought you were talking about Dana Plato.
Who the fuck is Dana Plato?
I don't know, but I heard the name somewhere and you said Plato. I'm like, okay.
I meant Plato, the philosopher. And
Dana Plato was
Like which Lenin, right? Which Lenin? Did you Lenin?
John.
Okay, I was gonna say
John.
you could be Lenin or
Nikolai or John?
I went Bob and Bruce Lee, so that it was not just a matter of intellectual skill, but intellectual skill that can translate into physical.
yeah.
When you're talking about Bach, was it Johann Sebastian Bach? Because I'm a little confused, you know, I'm here.
Sebastian Bach.
Just Sebastian Bach.
Basically talking about.
Yes,
You're basically talking about.
I was wondering if they called me a dickhead. It had to come out.
Learning is more fun than the acquisition of knowledge, I think.
Now, any of us, before I continue, and I'll listen to you in just a sec, we've all, at our school, have pretty much mostly attended the Socrates Cafe, where all you really do is ask a bunch of questions. So that's basically what I've
And
done.
listen to a bunch of idiots.
Yeah.
Which at least this room was a little bit called, we called the herd higher concentration of intelligence. For
But,
sure.
Yeah.
so I asked you a whole shitload of questions. Now give me the answers.
If I had no
42.
access of information, if I could not progress any further than where I was, and I was quote-unquote perfection, I would create a race of lesser beings to live vicariously through their ignorance.
Would this knowledge allow you to do that, to create people?
You said perfect knowledge.
Okay.
Alright, well maybe that's what God did.
You said something about spreading, and the first thing.
So then maybe what happened then was
But evil ones.
whoever God is was a man in the previous universe and came to this level.
Mitch, go ahead.
Okay, I would say that if I were able to have all knowledge, I think as Edgar Allan Poe argued in The Power of Words, I forget the names of the two quote-unquote angels or whatever that argue, and they say that to have all knowledge would be kind of depressing. So there has to be at least something that God himself doesn't know, at least according to that story. So I think that I love learning, but when I learn something, it's like an insatiable lust just takes you over with learning, because you always want to learn more and you always want to learn more. So if you got to the point where there's nothing left to learn, then what's the value in existence? Yeah, you know everything, but who cares? You have nothing more to learn.
That's the point. Well, then you share.
What I didn't get is I got two different impressions at two different parts. At one part, I got the impression that everyone had perfect knowledge, and then I got the impression that you're speaking specific to the listener.
I intended to speak to just one person, to apply it to yourself.
I had got that impression.
Okay?
I did too.
It seemed like the whole world was going to be,
The whole world would have all this knowledge?
yeah.
At the beginning, that's...
No, at the beginning, at the beginning, it's like anybody can have it, but then you focus it and say, okay, one person. What would you do with it? Who has it? Or how would you acquire it? What would you do with it? So you started to be specific with an individual
What would
level.
be the difference in implications then? If everybody had this knowledge, would it be any different than if just one person had all this knowledge?
Yes.
Of course it would.
Yes, because then we'd be the Borg.
Well, let's say this one person had all this knowledge, right? And as I asked several times ago, would you spread and teach and all that?
Yep.
Would you then allow everyone else to have that knowledge that you have?
No, I would be a Muppet pastor. Yes. No Muppet pastor.
No, Aaron, go ahead. Tell me what you were saying.
No, he just said Muppet pastor. I said he didn't agree into religion.
Could absolute knowledge be considered a religion? Is that how many people define God?
It's possible to have absolute knowledge considering the based on perspective.
Unless there is some outside extra force that did create everything, and that would be the ultimate perspective, because it would be from the creator's perspective.
Well,
Rather than
that's
from
part
the
of Plato's
created.
philosophy, which links itself. It doesn't link itself. Christians adopted a lot of it.
Duh.
But,
Right.
It's, all right, let me,
right after you.
yeah, as soon as I finish, is that there's just these truths sitting out there, that knowledge is something separate of the human mind, and that when we come to know knowledge, we grasp one of these things that already exist, that this knowledge exists independent of us.
Yes, because the chemical components of, say, gold existed long before we knew anything about how to divide it down to its smallest parts. Yes.
So you say that translates to science.
Why wouldn't it?
Explain.
Well, we all had DNA before, 50 years ago, before we knew DNA existed. We still had it. So yes, there is existence outside of knowledge, because...
There is knowledge outside of existence?
No, there's existence outside of active knowledge of it.
Something exists without us knowing about it.
Something can exist without us knowing about it. Like, there are galaxies and whatever. There's probably life somewhere in the universe that we will never know exists, but that does not preclude it from existing. Yeah. Just like if there's this exact discussion going on somewhere 12 billion light years away on the other edge of the galaxy, they might be having the same conversation. Is there any other intelligent life at this very... Well,
you're talking about the unknown and undiscovered. I think you're talking about insubstantial, ghostly or evil.
I was, because I felt that's how Plato was describing it. But this conversation can go anywhere you guys
but
want.
he was not necessarily an existential philosopher. He was a little bit more of a...
Substances?
Yeah, he was a materialist philosopher, but not in the acquisition of things, but in this reality versus some sort of unknown, extra-dimensional sort of metaphor.
Well, the table, there's tableness somewhere.
I can touch the result of knowledge. This is
you
the.
touch knowledge itself.
No, of course you can't.
See, but necessarily, if in Plato's time, go ahead.
Here's the problem. One, in Plato's view, I mean, you're going basically directly from the world of forms, philosophy he had. And in his view, in a sense, he sort of pulls a Maslow / Carl Rogers kind of psychology thing of saying that, there's some sort of perfect circle thing that exists, but you can't ever really get the perfect circle in a physical reality.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that you don't necessarily draw from the idea of the circle, but you can't get that. No matter what you do, you can't get that.
Yeah.
And and so I can see where you're coming from with this, because I mean, science in a sense does sort of draw from these sort of abstract, perfect absolutes, kind of in a sense.
Yeah.
Try to create, and then we would create something that's lesser, obviously, in the end.
Well, of course. Science creates technology right the other way around.
Okay.
Yeah. I think both of them actually probably feed off of each other.
So he mentioned a word. He said absolutes. One, is absolute knowledge possible? Two, if it were, no. What?
I think it exists. I don't think we're ever gonna know.
For the individual,
To know infinity?
don't care how good the person you are,
that's
you'll
what it
end up
would be,
being
is to
that
know
house,
infinity.
that physical, material pleasures in this world that just knowledge alone isn't going to bring.
Aaron, do you have anything? You look like you were thinking. Okay.
Just the
See,
one
he
element
admitted he
where
doesn't
you were
think.
saying if it would drive you crazy, or if you basically would want that extra power. I imagine if you had all that knowledge, you would know how to get rid of it if you didn't want it, right?
I suppose you would, but would you want to? Once having it, would you ever want to let it go?
If it was driving
Are you
crazy
kidding?
and you wanted to
Think
die,
about some of the superheroes that exist in the comics. They all of a sudden experience this vastly overwhelming either power or knowledge or whatever, and at some point or another, it drives them absolutely crazy. Where some of them are driven over the edge, and some of them are able to harness it and utilize it.
vigilantes.
Well, right. But if it's just like with anything else. Some people can handle more of fill in the blank than somebody else. That's just part of our either intellectual, physical, or emotional capacity. Some people have more than others.
If any one of us was to actually be able to have a conversation more or less in person with God, any one of us would consider him crazy.
He would be very neurotic.
To us, because we do not possibly have the ability to comprehend his mind.
But
Well,
see, here,
what was
And
that?
that's why they say insanity and genius is a thin line.
What was that
because
movie? And there was a play called Proof with the mathematician. You guys never seen that?
Nope.
Yeah, I've heard of it.
Actually, the Art Center just did it.
Yeah,
Um,
not too long ago.
and he's a mathematician. Well, in his dying days, he actually discovers this
It's only like a
this
page.
formula for I don't know what for. God knows it's math.
Give me a minute to finish this up.
And nobody thinks that he did, but he did. But he actually did. It kind of
he left a shit ton of notebooks.
messed with his head.
Yeah, math will do that. It's
Yeah, well, math does that anyway.
I love math, by the way. Thank you.
I do
Well,
too.
don't
You're ripping
have
on my math.
but
It's gotta suck though. You make like this many generals and you got 4 in a place where it's supposed to be a 2. And
Well, Bertrand Russell and Alfred Whitehead spent, 30-odd years writing Principia Mathematica, trying to redefine mathematics, and after 30 years of trying to do that, they were ultimately shown to basically have failed. So they spent 30 years researching something pretty serious.
Wow.
And they were both extremely intelligent men, and they just weren't able to do it.
Okay, I want to come back to a point that you said just a minute ago. Now, there is one philosopher, and I want to say it's Craig Sinnott Armstrong. He's a modern era philosopher. That, and he might have also been quoting someone else, but he said something like, "Better a Socrates unsatisfied than a pig satisfied." So if you ever to attain a certain higher level than a lower level being, he's saying that you would never want to be that lower level being. Even if you weren't satisfied being this smarter, better, greater, more powerful being, you would never want to be anything less than you are, even if it made you happy.
on the same respect, if you're rich, you don't want to be poor. If you have worked your way up to be rich, wealthy, you don't want to go back to being poor again.